So we have a concept in the Torah, something that's worse than death, worse than taxes, worse than public speaking, and that is what's called kares. Kares is worse than all of those things. So we have an introduction to kares in this week's parsha. The Torah tells us, a person who eats meat from shlamim, from this peace offering, asher LaHashem, v'tumasa olav, and he's tamei, he's not allowed to eat in a state of impurity. His soul is going to be cut off from its people. So the question is, what is kares? So you have a lot of different views, and the Ramban tries to put these views together to explain what kares is. First thing to note, kares is not what we'd consider a regular death. It's not a death that Beis Din is going to fulfill. Kares is generally when someone violates something either in a state of tumah, or sometimes there are some positive mitzvahs. Usually negative mitzvahs that a person violates would get him kares. Two positive mitzvahs would be bris milah, if a person avoids getting bris milah, or does not, or also related to the korban Pesach as well, and I believe is eating chametz on Pesach as well, that if someone has that, technically kares would apply to that as well, which means it has to be something related to that. So, that one needs a little bit of review on chametz on Pesach as well. So the question is, what is kares? So Rashi later on in the Torah is going to tell us, in a few words, Rashi basically says that if a person has kares, their children would die young, meaning if they have young children, they would die, and a person would die young as well. Seemingly, does that mean both at the same time? Not clear. Tosfos argues and says children do not die young unless the Torah tells you that they're going to die young. There is a dispute, and we'll explain the Ramban in a moment, but the dispute in the Gemara is whether in the Yerushalmi versus the Bavli, whether the Jerusalem Talmud versus the Babylonian Talmud, that if a person dies young, what is the definition of dying young? Is it before 50 or between 50 and 60? That's why many people have a minhag that they have a special kiddush once they reach the age of 60, because it means they're no longer going to be chayav kares. Because even according to the Bavli, who says 60, the Yerushalmi says before 50. So people have a minhag that when they turn 60, or the day after they turn 60, that they have a special kiddush for the fact that they are no longer under the confines of kares, that they're not going to die young for that reason. The Ramban explains that the Torah tells it different ways, and the Gemara tells you different ways. It all depends on the severity of a person's sin. So it's a quote from the Art Scroll. He says like this: if someone is basically righteous but cannot withstand the temptation to commit a kares-based sin, he'll die young, but will not lose a share in the world to come. If his sins outnumber his merits, his soul will be cut off from the world to come, but he will not necessarily die young. He may even live a very long life. In cases of idolatry and blasphemy, the Torah prescribes both early death and loss of a share in the world to come. Childlessness, too, applies only when the Torah specifies it, but is not necessarily a part of every kares punishment. The very fact that kares is mentioned in the Torah demonstrates that there is an eternal world for the soul. If there was no eternal world for the soul, then the Torah would just say that the person is actually going to die. By the fact that it says that there's kares on top of death, shows us that there's another level of what happens to a person. So therefore, kares is obviously worse than death. And a person, even if they have to experience death, sometimes that is an atonement, and they will still be able to have a share in the world to come. Rabbi Nachi Klein says this.